Okay, so right now we have the sort of end portion, the roundtable discussion of the conference, which takes more of a sort of universalist kind of like things that we like to think about, have probably been thinking about for months with recent developments in AI and also just generally technology and how we use it and so forth. But I would like to start with our concluding remarks because we are, as you notice, we are one short with our student volunteer, Allison, who has been trying to make her way here today, I'm told, and I hope she's okay, but we may have to sort of have Maiken step in. She's happy to do so and prepared for that. This has been a wonderful day, wonderful 2 days, sorry, it's all been a bit of a blur, hasn't it? And I'm really, really thankful for everyone's contributions to the conference, from start to finish, and to Ben, my co-organizer, to Maiken, my other co-organizer, and to Martina, our fourth organizer, and we have all been so absolutely delighted with the vast range and variety of projects and research and specialisms and methods that have been on show yesterday and today. That's really phenomenal. I think that really speaks to kind of the new guard of kind of what we do now in the humanities, of sort of doing different things, trying new things, but bringing the best of the old with the new as well, in a sensible fashion. To allow Allison a few more minutes to arrive, I'll do my concluding thoughts first. Since a little bit wonky. Okay, there we go. Sorry. So there's the thank you. I have been taking photos, and this reminds me now. If you have any questions about permissions, things about recordings and so forth, we'll do sort of secure and limited recordings first and share them with you. Make sure you're happy with them. And anything else, just get in touch with us about that. I have been taking some photos as well, just sort of mementos and things you can use in your professional spaces and so forth. So there'll be photos, there'll be videos and things that you can take away with you. And the other things that I hope you take away with you are the connections you've made, the people you've spoken to, the ideas that you've heard, the food and cakes and coffees that you've shared, and the hot temperatures of the rooms, of course. So that brings us on to not this. I can only put in words what has already been said 2,000 years ago as a Hebrew Bible and Jewish studies person, and of course Ecclesiastes Kohelet said over 2,000 years ago these words, but in the nicely poetic 1611 version of the King James Bible. All things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with hearing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It is already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. And I just put that in some of the display of all the many languages. Unfortunately, there isn't a Akkadian version of the Ecclesiastes as far as we know. But our Aleph, Alpha, and AI there has some Latin due to our range of Latinists too. So what did I do with this? Of course, I asked ChatGPT, is there anything new under the sun? And this is what it said to me. It said, well, you know, this Ecclesiastes and so forth, very, very verbose and so on, you know, literal things and so forth. And so it concludes, so while the phrase suggests a sense of repetition, it's important to recognize that innovation and novelty can still arise within the vast expanse of human endeavors. And being a teacher, I hate the way that this is written. And I think that also, well, I'll get to the way it's written in a second. Right. So is there anything you want to say? Let's sort of continue. So okay, good. I want to dig further, and it goes, well, you know, this and that, and furthermore, everyone's unique, and what may seem familiar could be new and exciting to others. Okay, that's a lot of waffle, and if I was marking this, I think I wouldn't have to mark it behind. And then I went to test it further, of course, and I said, no, please argue instead that there is absolutely nothing new under the sun, because you can do that with ChatGPT, which is quite fun. Do that. Some arguments that support the notion that there is nothing new under the sun, and it gives me a whole list of arguments in a very verbose fashion, patterns and repetition, limited resources, the limits of human perception, heard that one before, evolutionary continuity, and then it concludes, these arguments suggest that while we may experience progress and novelty within our limited scope of perception and understanding, the fundamental elements and patterns of existence remain largely unchanged. And the stress people will notice the things that I have been stressing there indicate maybe what I am unhappy with the way that ChatGPT writes, which is that it has a very big problem with circumlocution. So if we compare to the English Standard Version, I had then asked it, okay, can you do better than the preacher, than the Ecclesiastes? And so then it gave me a very academic style. I actually asked it to do academic English and see what it came up with. And of course, it gave me lots of very long words. And that's to compare with the original. And it sort of finishes, there is no recollection of the events of old, nor will there be any remembrance of the events that are yet to come among those who will follow. And of course, as I say, I'm not really happy with the way that ChatGPT expresses itself. So I said, wrong, please avoid circumlocutory phrases in the proofread. Can you please edit it again concisely without circumlocutory phrases and long words, just to be really clear about what I don't want it to do. So again, the original on the left that the biblical translators had thought about, and ChatGPT's version. Here's a concise proofread, a more straightforward style. Everything is tiresome. No one can fully describe it. What has happened will happen again, and what has been done before will be done again. There is nothing truly new under the sun. And now it's getting to what I wanted to do, is a slightly bit more, almost Emily Dickinson-esque. Well, I wouldn't go that far because there would be an offense to Emily Dickinson. Is there anything new that hasn't already existed? It was already here in the past. We don't remember what happened in the past. And future generations won't remember what we do, which I thought was a lovely way to finish. And so it drives me, you could almost see it carved on a funerary epitaph, that kind of language at the end of the ephemerality of everything that we do, and also the notes of novelty and innovation that I hope have come across to you in this journey through Ecclesiastes, that although things are very new and exciting, of course, 2000 years ago, they thought so too. But that doesn't mean that it isn't significant and important, has meaning. So that is a journey through where some of my thoughts traveled earlier today. So that's the sum of what I wanted to say. There's nothing new under the sun. So if you've got your phone or laptop with you, go to menti.com if you're on a laptop, or you can just do QR codes there. And people who are on Zoom, you can type in the link that I put into the chat. And be looking after the chat as well to see what you guys are saying. So let's begin then with that Mentimeter that we will traveling towards. I hope it works. Okay, so if you have it, it should turn up with the title page that says kind of what does the future of research with digital technology look like. I always like to be explicit with digital technology because not all technology is digital, is it? Chairs, wheels. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So if you have your things ready to poll. Okay, so it should take you now to the first poll. So start voting. What does the near future of research look like with digital assistance? Is it friendly robot or is it Terminator 2 Judgment Day? The Silver Surfer. Oh, the code is right up here.
Oh, right.
Sorry, it's very tiny. 89605310. Okay, so mostly we think that it's good and not Skynet. There you go. Okay. What is the second question now? Another quick vote. What does the distant future of research with digital assistance look like? Is it Judgment Day or friendly robot? Oh no. We're actually putting it in the middle. Right. Okay, now I want you to talk to the person next to you and the company of Jordi and Data. Discuss with the person next to you why you chose those options for a few minutes, and we'll see what the Zoom people say as well. So you guys as well can chat and see.
I said
yeah.
That's my opinion. We haven't had a lot of data. Those specific limitations can be very it can be. It's the trajectory that yeah, I mean that's can we see the yeah. Whether it's
Right. Thanks. Okay, that's you guys using friendly robots and not some friendly robots. The next one, Spencer, is what does the near future of higher education with AI look like? Remember, near future. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's pretty. Oh, no.
Okay, lovely. And the next one, hope everyone's voted. We'll just get through to when we can start chatting. What does the distant future of higher education with AI look like? This is where we find out who are the optimists and the pessimists.
I do agree.
Yes. Right, shall we go for some? Yeah, okay, so you get another chance to chat to your neighbor again, just why you chose those options for the higher education one this time. So just two bits, same thing. Yeah.
Oh, I really like it. But I need to know.
But once we establish rules and regulations, so that's why I'm like, no now. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's also past exams which with a 99%.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm telling this, they'll talk about this. But yes, so the big thing is both ways.
Okay. Onwards. No. Okay, the next thing on the Menti, the last thing is an open text, so just write in what your thoughts are on the question. So what's next on the horizon for any of the things that we've been talking about the last 2 days, whether, or what's relevant for you mostly, but things like linguistics or digital tools or textual criticism, your own fields, classics, theology, or your own other areas of interest. So what's next on the horizon, given technology or ideas that you've heard, and or things that you sense from putting your ear to ground and things like that. See what pops up. Well, poor Charlie Chaplin turns through the cogs. Stand up, it's probably monographs. We've lost it. Amazing. Okay, I probably leave that up to us you to keep putting things in. So that means we can now proceed. If you say on the Mentimeter, you can, I think, continue to put things in. And now I'll hand over to my colleague Martina, who will handle the roundtable questions to start facilitating the discussion, which is entirely open. And you have some of the questions that we can talk about all the talks and just chip in as you like. And okay.
All right. So yes, I just wanted to tell you a little bit of why we decided to do a roundtable at the end. I mean, it happened to me once to participate in a roundtable, and I thought it was an incredible experience because you could discuss everything that had been told during 2 days of very challenging and intriguing papers. And so I proposed Lindsey and Ben and Maiken, when we're organizing, we should conclude the conference with a roundtable that involves also students at any level, because we have a broad range of different experiences. And so, yeah, we came up with a few questions, but as I told them before, I don't want them to limit themselves to these questions if they have other ideas. So yeah, I mean, we thought it would be nice to start summarizing a little bit what has been told, what they have taken from the talks they listened to, and then to think broadly about the role of digital humanities that has been so present these 2 days, will play nowadays in research. So I think, I mean, I'm sure that you will be great at handling this. Please introduce yourselves to our speakers and to the rest of the public, and then let's dig in.
Thank you, Martina. I suppose I will start because I am one of the 4 organisers of this conference. So I was stepping in here, Alison. So this is improvisation for me. So we'll see how this goes. Together with Martina, I have been doing PhD research in the classics department, well, classics and ancient history here at Bristol. This past year, I've also been working as a lecturer in classics, teaching Roman history. But my background is actually Egyptology. So I now do research in Roman Egypt, including Greek epigraphy. Language-wise, I consider myself to be more of a Semiticist, but I dabble in Greek and Latin as well. In terms of my view on this, I think I'm actually on both sides in this whole thing. So sometimes I'm a bit on the fence. Sometimes I'm in favor of these kind of things. In other cases, I'm not so much. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of this this debate. But it's very exciting to have you here, and thank you again for agreeing to this. It's great to have you. And Charlie.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Charlie. I've just finished my undergraduate degree in religion and theology here at Bristol, and I'm currently in the process of applying for an MA here, not an MA, an MPhil here. I'm mostly interested in Judeo-Christianity and magic in particular. So like Matt, I'm a bit of a bol nerd. And I have studied, while I've been at university, I've looked at Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew and Akkadian, which I used in my dissertation. I do not know a lot about AI and sort of the humanities. I've used a lot of different databases like Cal and Perseus while I've been at university. But hearing everybody's talks today, I wasn't able to attend yesterday, so I'm on limited information. But hearing everybody's talks today really opened my eyes to just how applicable it could be. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting discussion to have.
So I'm Edward. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Reading, so I think I'm the only person not from Bristol here. But my research primarily focuses on the interactions of lived religious experience in Afghanistan during the Hellenistic period. So I look at where the Greeks, Arabians, and Buddhists all met in Bactria specifically. Now that really has nothing to do with AI per se, but in my research I've looked at Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, polytexts, a whole variety of things. And the reason I'm here is because last year I was teaching Latin and the year before Greek, and with ChatGPT coming along, I thought, how good is it with these ancient languages? So I've done some research into how good conversational AI tools are actually at translating from the language into English and conversely, and written some work about that. But so I have a lot of opinions about it, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Hi, I'm Giulia, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Pisa, but currently I'm here visiting the University of Bristol. And I'm not into AI too, but it was a great opportunity because all your papers gave me really much food for thought. So it's going to be great to engage in this discussion because I do study interpolation. So above all, the attribution problems I really care about that. And the thing I use is TLG every day and databases, and obviously all the document digitalizes, but all this new stuff, it's really inspiring because I don't use any of that. So let's see. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's should we do this as a bullet point type of thing, or just start with the top? So reactions to the presentations and the differences and overlaps in methods. I suppose I'll start with some thoughts I have. So I myself don't use AI very much in my research. In fact, I haven't used any AI in my research because there aren't really any tools available to me for my specific type of research. But I am, so my approach here is someone who likes to learn ancient languages, and I also like to teach ancient languages. So I think there are different approaches that work for teachers and different approaches that work for students and also for researchers. I think one type of software and digital tool that I'm a big fan of is stuff like online databases and online dictionaries. So databases of words, and even better if they have some sort of grammar information. And my view on that is that I don't consider it to be cheating either as a teacher or a student to consult these kind of things. I think they can help us learn and they can help us memorize. I think anything that's a memorization tool, I think is great. One of the concerns is, are people going to stop wanting to learn if they have all of these digital tools available? That is one of the questions. I think the papers we've seen today, I think that was quite eye-opening in the sense that we can, like for example, with the authorship and attribution and things like that, that's not stuff that the average student is going to be looking at, I don't think, because this is all quite advanced stuff for scholars. Yeah.
Sure.
So do we need to be concerned with the sort of things students are getting access to when they're learning ancient languages? That's a big question for me.
I think from my perspective, because obviously I've used a lot of Perseus and Cal for like my dissertation and throughout first and second year, I think for me, they were very helpful tools to be able to pass things when I was just getting the hang of stuff. But I remember when I was doing my Greek exams, I realised there was a real danger of becoming really over-reliant on it, just because depending on what you put in, if you know how to manipulate it well, then you can get basically whatever you want out of it. So for learning the basics, I think that things like that for students are really good, but I think that there does have to be a bit of care taken as to, okay, is there an over-reliance on not necessarily memorising the texts, but just being like, oh, I could type in, you know, a word like normos into Perseus and get exactly what I want out of it. I think it just takes away some of the sort of understanding that you get. But it's still a very good tool. I think it's just dangerous to over-rely on it, really.
Well, generally, whenever I have taught students, especially at the lower level with Greek and Latin, I've always said to my students that these are things that are really good, especially once you know the rules. Once you know how everything works, then using these tools are super helpful, because if you don't remember all your grammar, you don't remember all of your vocabulary, it's a great way just to remind yourself and look at other possible options you may have forgotten about. But otherwise, if you don't know much, you're basically trying to cut a cake with a jackhammer. Even though it could work, it's not as effective as another tool could be. And so that's why I generally also agree with you in that sense that at the early levels, not so much. You need to know when to use it and how much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I have to say about this topic, I really think that Italy has a different situation, and the problem is that in Italy, people, teachers, for example, in high school, want students to learn by heart all the rules, but that can be very annoying, and students are getting bored from these subjects. So under that specific perspective, I find that these new tools could be also useful to give a fresh start with our subjects, in order maybe to have new tools and verify our way of differentiate our way of teaching, and maybe make them more involved. But I'm afraid that they could really rely too much on them. It's a problem absolutely to deal with.
But then to connect back to other presentations we saw today, it's not all about the students as well, right? It's about breaking new ground. It's about having research that finds and discovers things that we didn't realize. So AI, because like quite a few presentations said today and yesterday as well, that they have the capacity to do things that the human brain does not currently have. And we can answer questions that we never really thought we were able to actually realize. And that was something that I especially was astounded by, especially looking at the relationship between texts, also being able to generate ideas about music and the physical creation of the body. All these things are things that I didn't think we could do without those tools. But
It's not good technology, very good.
this is not good technology. But yeah, it's amazing what we can do with this, and we have to realize that at a certain level, it is too much. And again, like I said, cutting a cake with a jackhammer.
Yeah.
Know when to use it and how to use it, and at what level you need to realize you can use it.
And that's what I mean when I say that a lot of these papers, so once you get to the level that you can use all of the software that people have been presenting here, presumably you already know the language, right? You have already gotten to the point where you understand the data and you know how to use the data, research it, and so on. So in that case, I think there are some potentially really great things, especially things like with manuscripts and finding little bits and pieces of manuscripts. Like, so for example, let's say let's say we didn't have any digital manuscripts or any digital text, like, can you imagine having to go through all of that physically and having to travel to all these like high-risk collections and sitting down and just doing all of that manually? It's just, I don't think that, yeah, people used to do that. So it would take years to do something that we can now do fairly quickly, just because we have the digital archives and
yeah, you can make a huge amount of data,
yeah.
and also ask bigger questions. That's what I like of the presentation we had today, that we had a wide perspective on problems. And then what it really fascinated me and inspired me is that scholars keep asking questions. They see the results and they engage critically with that, because we cannot abdicate to our role, obviously. And that's what I have seen and what I loved about engage with these new tools. So you have a better perspective, but also more work to do, because you have to ask new questions and to stay involved. So difficult task.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday after Todd's talk, I had a look at the Proto-Indo-European lexicon that you mentioned. And I thought that was a very good idea. I'm a big fan of that website now. And that's the kind of tool that's really good for getting people to think about things like etymology, where do words come from, why do different languages in that group have similar words and so on. So things like that are really great. And those can be used as research tools and teaching tools and learning tools as well, students. So I think there are some differences in the languages. Different languages will have different tools there, because, for example, Greek and Latin, the study of Greek and Latin is very established. You know, this is a classics as a discipline. I mean, how far back can we trace it? Like hundreds of years now, I think. So the study of Greek and Latin is really established. You have all these tools, all these books. So when it comes to something like the Egyptian language, which is what I specialize in, we don't really have very much at all in terms of digital tools. We have textbooks and like book dictionaries, which are actually quite tricky to navigate if you're not a specialist. So I think in that area, it's not a case of do we have too many tools and is it irresponsible? The question is, why don't we have more tools? So in some languages you have loads of tools, and in others you just don't have any. So there is some sort of imbalance there. Do you think there's do you think there should be more focus on the sort of non-Indo-European languages, developing more tools for that?
I think the
Semitic, for example.
main problem there, I don't know if that's problematic to think, but it's the initiative as well, because there needs to be someone who is trained in those technological skills as well as the language, who can work well enough to be able to produce tools at that same level. And at some point when we think there are no tools there, well, then I will have to go and make that tool. That we found a research gap, that's what we need to fill. And so at least I think there should be more. The main thing will then be is that someone needs to do it, but who are the people that can do it?
Yeah, and the cool thing is that, for example, if you develop a software, for example, is a software as we have seen for ancient Greek, then you can give your software and someone else can use it with other languages or texts. So it should be everything seen in a cooperative way. Either something is open access, you can use it on another discipline. So why not? For sure, it would be great to have more tools.
What do you think? Do you want to intervene in the discussion? Also people on Zoom, I don't know why I'm looking here because it can't. But like, what are your opinions on what they are discussing? It would be nice to hear. Please.
Can I just pick up on the last point in terms of, the tools not being there? One of my areas, Sumerian, we haven't even got a dictionary that's worth calling a dictionary. Let me put it like that. To some extent, I think one could argue that the subject, the field, is still so comparatively new. In the same way Akkadian was 100, 150 years ago. Sumerian is still struggling to actually explain itself and get some consensus about certain things. I mean, we can understand it pretty much, but exactly how it works and how it is represented it is another matter. So there has been the electronic dictionary, but that was sort of left in a state of limbo some years ago. And it's helpful, but it's not good enough. There are volumes of a dictionary appearing sort of, but that's very haphazard. So I suppose what I'm saying is, yeah, I agree, we need tools, but we actually need tools that are more conventional in some areas, in the same way that the Chicago's Akkadian dictionary, or Syrian dictionary as it's called, is a great tool. So, you know, I support Todd's. But you know, that is a great tool.
Maria,
I thought I would like to take advantage now that we have students there answering. So one question from me to you would be what kind of things you would wish to have in teaching that were new and AI produced? What would be something that sort of would be helpful for you for your learning? I know from sort of not the AI point, but I have used tree banking as a teaching tool at operations, and it's quite helpful for students. They really have to actually label every single word and make a meaning for it. But then going further to the AI part, so what kind of things you would hope to have in your classes?
I think for me, where I'm still not really at an advanced level, I think for me it would be just carry on getting more sort of databases and things like that, but make them much more accessible. Just because I can kind of speak to the Sumerian comment, because I know that part of my dissertation was Akkadian, which is not the same thing, but I did stumble across a few sort of Sumerian sources and things like that, and the situation did look quite dire. So, but no offense to the field of Sumerians. So I think
That's an interesting field.
yeah. So I think that increasing accessibility in those sorts of areas for more languages than just Greek necessary, because I can't speak to Latin because I've not touched Latin. But even for Hebrew, it's not as comprehensive as I think it could be. Like for Greek, it's everywhere. And for Hebrew, there's just not as much in databases. And when I was doing Akkadian for my dissertation, I had to get out dictionaries from 1905, for goodness sake. So like, you know, I think it just needs to be on that level for undergrads. As for like masters and beyond, I can't really speak to that yet, but I think that some of the things that have been spoken about here are definitely very inspiring for thinking, for students who want to go forwards, of thinking, okay, how can I move into these new areas, and what are the, you know, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages? So yeah, I think that's my sort of thoughts on that.
so we need a Perseus for
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be lovely.
Yeah,
to
I mean, you don't need to wait 30 years to build Perseus.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Say that that's actually part of the problem, funding incentives, like you guys in Europe broadly are actually better at longer term projects like that. The US, I mean, honestly, I've gotten several grant proposals rejected because the comment is that people really want to learn ancient languages.
That's a big problem in Europe as well. Definitely.
Even so, like if I were to have gotten that grant within 3 years, so it's like, you know, create an amazing resource in 3 years, or good luck funding it for the fourth year.
Charges of elitism are a big problem. I have heard cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. And I think that availability of sources and a way of learning these languages could be a way to show that it's not how they want depicted it was, but now we are trying to engage with these problems, with this issue, and as young scholar at least, because I feel very sad when I hear of that, because it's not what I mean, but I do understand why they're saying that, and I think this is a good direction.
It's tricky though, because one side of the political spectrum more quick to do that than the other. And so the
That's true.
language is weaponized very quickly.
Absolutely.
I had a question about, while we're on this area of pedagogy and learning a language, learning the basics, all the kind of spade work, that sort of thing. And it's not clear to me why we would be committed to the idea of that the sort of traditional way of learning a language is sort of the best. So, for instance, we've got this idea that really the way you learn an ancient language should be with some big dusty dictionaries, and it should be quite painful. and I'm just not sure about that. And I also feel that life is short, and many of us want to learn other languages. And I'm super interested in how we can do it more quickly and more effectively. And I've started finding ways to use things like Google Translate and so on with what languages and to try and speed up some of the processes. And I just, because it seems to me that you have a bit of concern that it would take over, and it would necessarily be worse if people, like if a generation came through that found a different way of learning languages, it would necessarily be a worse way. But it might be a better way.
Well, this is actually something we talked about a couple of weeks back whenever we met, about we have to rethink, especially people who are teaching languages, to consider why are we teaching these languages? Why does it matter that we're teaching these languages? Exactly what you're saying. And we were talking a bit about this idea of, does it have to be with a dictionary? Could we make comic books? Could we think of other ways to make the language more interesting? Could we think of more tools that are more accessible to people that don't want to have to sit with the musty dictionary or sit and stare at a vocabulary list for hours on end? Because I think about studying modern languages, like you say, most people, I don't know about you, but whenever you're learning a modern language, do you watch a film in the other language with subtitles on, right? That helps you get the idea in. So what if we started to do the same thing with an ancient language, like you see with how people have translated Harry Potter into Latin and Greek. Winnie the Pooh as well. Yeah, and make it into a way that's more both enticing, I guess, as well as also being not just about the straightforward rote. You have to memorize all this and do it the way I did because I suffered and you have to suffer as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's such a wrong way to look at things. I mean, okay, so the issue of being painful, as a teacher of ancient Egyptian language, my approach is that it should actually be fun for people to do. Because no one comes to my classes saying, I just really want to learn ancient Egyptian grammar. Like no one says that. That is not what anyone thinks. What people think is hieroglyphs are cool. I want to learn them. Yeah. So you need to draw on that. People come into the class thinking this is a really cool thing, and that's what you need to draw on. So I don't sit there thinking, oh, they have to suffer with the textbook. In fact, I sort of direct them away from the textbooks because I create all of my own study materials, which are not meant to be painful. They are meant to be interesting and engaging. So I do agree with that. I don't think it's the case that the old way has to be the best way. Not at all. So for me, the key word is fun. So if a software can make it fun to learn, I mean, some people say Duolingo is quite fun, right? No.
It's boring.
But I thought whether it's fun though. I think what I'm trying to say is there are different ways of learning. And my fear is we become self-selecting as people who do rather perhaps get on with the old ways of learning a language. And people who don't might then never have the access, and AI might provide a way in people to engage with language in a novel way that's not necessarily, well, whether it's fun, whether it works for them. They wake up the next day and they remember the language.
I think that we arrived in a way to the third bullet point, to how to use these instruments as when a calculator was invented, before that everyone did their counting by hand, which is horrifying for me. But then when we invented a calculator and then the computer, I mean, this didn't make people less able to do math, to do arithmetics. It actually helped, and it brought us forward. So I guess, could we try to transform this kind of new instruments in tools to better ourselves, like to do way more than what we were able to do with our brains.
Well, I mean, this brings me to the point I've been really excited for, is talking about ChatGPT and conversational AI tools. Because I really think it's something that, especially when we're thinking about essay questions, right? I don't know if any of you have been marking essays this year and seen ChatGPT written essays already. I know I have. But it's one of those things where I have tested it to try and see, because we think about, just like you were saying, new ways to do it that are maybe not interesting, but more effective to the individual person. And as a conversational AI tool, it talks like a human. So it's as if we're having an independent tutor that we don't have to pay to be able to help a student in the way that they want or they're used to. And especially the way I find is, like, especially ChatGPT it can quiz, it can help translate, it can check things here and there. Now, whether or not the actual capabilities are up to snuff yet, it does have the ability to work in a way that can help a student learn the grammar, check over vocabulary, look at sentence translations, help with prose compositions, all those things. Now, I will say, I want to caveat all this by saying, from what I've tested, Latin's pretty decent overall. Again, it's still mediocre at best, but it's better than Greek and Sanskrit, because Greek, unfortunately, has a mixed lexicon. For some reason, so for Latin, at least, we do have people like Patrick Burns who have looked at what lexicon ChatGPT actually has. So if you look him up, he's actually been working on the project to actually list every single Latin word that ChatGPT knows.
We had invited him.
Oh,
Couldn't make it.
yeah, oh, yeah, well, and then with Greek, one thing I noticed is that it can translate somewhat ancient into English reasonably, especially if it's text that we already know about, but with any compositions, it actually mixes the ancient and modern lexicons together and creates something that makes no sense.
Helps if we tell it asking.
Pardon?
Helps if we tell it asking.
Yes, I tried, believe me. I spent weeks trying to get it to say something reasonable. And at one point I asked it to write a phrase after giving it a bunch of pre-training, and it provided me an ancient Greek poem written in modern Greek grammar.
Whoa.
Yeah, which with a bunch of modern Greek words. Same thing with Sanskrit. Even though it does look reasonable, because there is a living Sanskrit community these days, there are actually living Sanskrit words that are integrated into its lexicon. So even though you wouldn't expect in a classical Sanskrit sentence to talk about telephones, for some reason it likes to talk about televisions and telephones. Because the words are there and it doesn't know the difference between the ancient world and the modern world, because it's just outputting words that we're expecting. Yeah, it's making things that it doesn't understand, but thinks that you want it to say. Yeah.
I just want to say something about what you are listening. All these sorry.
Louder.
Yeah.
As loud as you can.
You said that it's very, very, very difficult to have something meaningful, understandable by ChatGPT from languages that are not used today, etc. I want to say something about all these fields, because my impression is that all these digital tools and funding resources may more severe fracture that already exists about between disciplines, languages, ancient languages that are popular, so they have foundings, resources like Latin, Greek, etc., and languages that are not particularly popular, academic, etc. Digital resources are very useful, but the risk is to create two paths of research, one faster than the other. Do you think that this is a problem? It's a real problem.
Definitely, because that's one of the things that I've been looking at as well. Because ChatGPT and conversational AI tools are so quick at creating things, it can write an entire essay in 5 seconds, right? Where it would normally take us either a couple hours at least, or maybe a couple days or weeks. These are things that we need to consider, and right now there aren't very many ethical considerations in terms of these tools, how we should use these tools and think about using these tools in the wider community as well as in the scholarly world. And I think that's something that we need to consider, and like that's why, especially like responding to those questions earlier in the Mentimeter, I think right now, because we don't have a path forward, there's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of things are going to slip through the cracks. And I know for the case, as one case I heard about recently, was that even a peer reviewer for a journal article wrote the peer review on ChatGPT. And it was the article was rejected simply because the reviewer said these sources in the field weren't referenced, but those sources were made up by ChatGPT and didn't exist. So it's something that is a problem, an endemic problem that we will need to address and consider. But once we have ethical considerations to deal with this, so to stop it from simply just being output, 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 but rather being, it's something that we can use to model ourselves off of and continue on. But again, it's a question for us to consider for the next short period.
Also because I guess now we can notice if it is done by ChatGPT or using ChatGPT, but I don't know much about AI, but from what I gather, they keep learning as much as you feed them information. And so they will become more and more sophisticated, and so it will be harder and harder to notice if something was actually created by an AI or by a human. I don't know, I'm just throwing this in the bunch, please.
Can I just say something? We're focusing on human languages and ChatGPT's ability to reproduce that, just because a lot of people here are like at the beginning stages of creating digital tools. If you haven't been in the discourse on this, please realize that ChatGPT is actually pretty awesome at helping you program. All right, so if you haven't used it yet, by all means, take advantage of it. And the program, so you type in human language what you want the program to do, and you say, I want in Python, give me a Python program to do this, that, and the other thing based on the data I'm going to input. It will spit out a program for you, right? So that's when you start.
Yes.
It won't work. What you do is you run it, and then you say, oh, but the error message that came out said on line 232, this is a problem. And then it says, oh, I'm sorry for the mistake. And it'll do it again, right? So debugging is this terrible process all of programmers go through that just sucks your will to live. But GPT kind of offload some of that life-sucking.
I have no will to live to begin.
It's smoother, right?
It doesn't have the overall like architecture, so
No,
might be
it's-
if you need a particular
it's
script,
for
but if you're
particular
trying to set
tasks.
a big system,
Yeah.
and it doesn't always look, okay, but that if you're looking ahead in adding that kind of feature, then this would actually be a problem. It
Right.
looks perfect for now, but
So give it a
but
small
for
task
particular
to
scripts,
do, and then, or you can hook into a system that already uses these variables, right? But just give it a small task and it will get you started, and then you can debug with it.
But we have a problem with our students because we ask them to write script and they go to ChatGPT and
Oh, yeah,
it
yeah.
does, and they use it, and then you're like, okay, why did you do that? And they don't know. Because the script works, but they didn't write it.
Right, but then back to the same problem we
Yeah,
had already,
exactly.
but like, you don't have to know why your program worked in some sense to get it going, right? You can figure that out later.
But for me, the problem is not that the tools exist. For me, it's cool that exists so many tools. For me, the problem is all the people have the same tools because, for example, the problem with the varied fields or branch languages is like someone has a car and someone has a horse. It's not the same. You can go anywhere with a car and the horse, but they are quite different.
I coming back to a lot of times you've mentioned as well in the issue of ethical.
Can you
guidelines? Yeah, I mean, since the issue of ethical guidelines, I'm wondering whether we're narrowing it down too much and saying, okay, we're looking at it ethically, are people using it properly and what are they doing? But
rather than looking at guidelines of how to even use it. So what creating a pipeline and a method for using ChatGPT and models or any other tools which we don't even know about yet. Creating methods and pipelines of using them and guidelines for using them, and then, okay, this is broader, one can then also create these mechanisms, incorporate them into these kind of ChatGPT tools. But I'm wondering also for the teaching or for the research whether one should talk more broadly about, more broadly than ethical, just, but rather really talk about ways of doing it. So what does it mean? I mean, how do you go about now programming this ChatGPT? Not just how to actually do it, but to do it in a way which takes into consideration the implications if you go this way or go that way. So like textbooks about this, and I'm just wondering, I don't know how much, I mean, this is a much broader question perhaps, but I think for research or for teaching,
yeah,
your opinions are.
Yeah, so I mean, this is something, so recently, my colleague Jackie Baines and I have gotten a grant to look into this further and talk a bit more and research this a bit further over the next year. And I completely agree with you that there's complete difference between this is the only way you should do it, and we're going to show you what the limitations are, and this is the possibilities you have, and grow from there. And so it definitely comes down to the question of why are we teaching? What's the point? What do we want the students to learn? Do we want the students to just learn the language, just learn how to program, just explain these things, or do we want them to be able to kick off of what we've learned and continue forwards? So the main thing, I think, especially this is something my guiding principle for how I'm looking at this, is that the point is this is a step and we're taking a step and we're showing people how to take the step so they can take further steps beyond this. And that's at least how I see it. And I completely agree with you on that point.
Yes, please.
I was just wondering, in relation to what you just said there, whether there's a risk sort of systemically in humankind that we actually lose the ability to know the foundations. So, I mean,
that was the Ezekiel quote, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think there's obviously the place for what you're saying. All of us use stuff all the time, but we can't explain how it does it. But is there a place, at least for some people, to know how it works? So that, and then the risk is that if in a sense nobody, obviously, I mean, you're talking steps down the line, but I don't know. So do you thoughts on how you manage that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there has to be people who program the program itself, right? And when I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking about it particularly from a classics perspective, right? We're talking about students who probably have no desire to code, but they have these tools out there that they want to be able to use. So we show them how to use them, because there are other people, which again, I probably may or may not interact with, but there are other people who are working towards developing these tools. And we're just showing the next generation of people how to use them in a way that makes it so they don't have to troubleshoot like we did. And so I think you're right in the case that there are people that need to know the brass tacks, but for people that have no intention of working with the brass tacks, do they really need to know?
I'd say be careful with that, because it's kind of a stipulation in programming, don't reinvent the wheel, right? So somebody already wrote a package for that, use the package, don't write your own, right? So I don't have to know how that's implemented.
I find it's part of the criminal education as well. Like, what's the point of education institution if you can learn everything online or on YouTube? Like, what do we do? Are we then teaching students how to be critical, or are we then like the guardians of the right way? Like, what's the point of a university? This is way down the line, I hope. But, maybe not way down, maybe it's getting quicker towards us, but like even now, like some students, they don't know how to think critically already, and they don't even have the tools yet. They haven't had the ability to use them, and now they have them. It's like, well, I worry about my own mind, honestly. Like, I just use tools, like. It kind of, this is not something I normally think about, but kind of psychology of humans and identity. Like, are we just thinking of ourselves as tools? Like, it kind of comes back to your question about what's wrong with moving on to new ways of learning languages. Well, it's because we feel like we need to do it the old way, because what if we're replaced or something? And we need to be a tool. We need to have a purpose. So going to go existentially. This is the CBC. I need to have a use, and so if there's a tool which replaces me.
But I think that's a big question in the whole debate, actually.
But
about
also,
AI.
like, I think we did kind of tackle this in these days, because in several talks, we noticed that, like, very good classes use the instrument, and then they say, oh, but it can do this. Like Lorenzo's talk today showed that you always need the human part to check things out, basically. And also, I think this connects this question also to what Maria was saying before, in the way that she taught tree banking to her students. I mean, when I saw tree banking the first time, I didn't find it so different from what I was doing manually at school. Like when they taught me Greek and Latin, start from the verb, write a piece of verb, and go and find the subject and start looking for the complements. But like doing it with tree banking is way more exciting. First, because visually it is exciting. You see all these, arrows and stuff. But then you can make them do this on text that then they are annotated, and then they can be used as digital editions. For example, there's a scholar in Italy that Maria knows, Francesco Mambrini. During lockdown, he worked with a university in South Carolina, and with the students, they annotated all Oedipus the King. And you can find online Oedipus the King annotated and ready to use for teaching. And so in this way, students can also collaborate to research in a way, even before becoming researchers in themselves. And at the same time, they learn very logical processes, because completing a tree bank is a very logical and problem-solving kind of activity that so can be repurposed to many fields, and not just to become, a person who does critical editions of Sophocles. What do you think? I'm open to anybody, of course.
I think from an undergrad perspective, I certainly agree that the tools are really useful. Like, I know that all the way through this, I've kind of said, give me the tools, because I can't do my dissertation without them. But there is definitely something to be said that we do need the fundamentals down in a human manner, I think, because without putting anybody that I know in it, the amount of people that I know who got certain essay ideas, not writing them on ChatGPT, not at all, but getting particular ideas from them or trying to find sources from ChatGPT. The amount of people I know who talked about doing that is ridiculous. And whilst there are certainly going to be merits to asking a computer to try and find the gaps in research, I think that there's something very human about having to find those yourself when a computer has just had things fed to it. I don't think that having just that as a tool and people thinking, okay, the computer's identified this gap, now I'll go and fill it. I think that that's a bit problematic in terms of, especially if you're learning the basics of critical thinking and all the stuff that university is there for. That's sort of my, it's a useful tool, but people have to be educated on how to use it. And I think especially this year, in third year, where we've had the rise of ChatGPT and things like that, just as we've started writing our dissertations, a lot of people just weren't sure where the limits were with it. And I don't think any of us felt that the School of Humanities really addressed it outside of this is ChatGPT, don't write your essay on it.
No, because from a staff perspective, this has come out of nowhere.
Well, exactly.
This sort of thing. So there are no tools to deal with it from a teaching perspective. But in terms of using that sort of thing, that sort of software to have suggestions. So after we had our workshop in Reading, I decided to test my Snapchat AI, which has just been introduced. And I asked it, can you please translate this sentence? I think I said, the man hears his son. And I said, can you please translate that into Egyptian hieroglyphs for me? It came back with emojis, and it was completely it was complete nonsense. It has no concept of what hieroglyphs are. It just doesn't understand that in slightest. It doesn't understand how it works or anything. And I said to it, that's incorrect. And it responded saying, I'm sorry, I don't know Egyptian hieroglyphs. but I can point you to resources. So if I were a student, let's say maybe if I was in my first year, I suppose it's feasible that I could have thought, oh, this must be some sort of authoritative source for finding resources for me. Now I would say I don't trust what it's going to give me, so I didn't ask it. But I think from a student perspective, I can see why that can be a tempting thing to do.
Yeah, I can understand why some, like, again, I'm not going to name any names, but like I can understand why some of the people that I know sort of thought in the preliminary stages of planning an essay or something like that, I can really understand why they sort of said to their mates, oh, I might try and use ChatGPT because it will identify things that I can't find. I think because we've titled it AI, you know, I think a lot of students in my position have just sort of said, oh, therefore it's authoritative because it's futuristic and, you know, it's what we've been waiting for and things like that. But there really does, I understand that from a teaching perspective, it's all new and obviously these things take time, but I think there have to be some very honest conversations between faculty and student members about this is what AI actually means. This is what we know ChatGPT can do. This is what we know it can't do. So if you use it at your discretion or peril or however strongly you want to put that.
Yes. But I think, I think a student, our job would be to teach a student to be able to okay, that's the gap that AI is recognizing me. But now I start reading, I start working on it. I'm critical or not critical, I accept the gap and I do with it something. So I think it's also about transparency that I'm using ChatGPT and what I'm doing with it. I mean, I think rather than battling, don't do it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Because all of the people that spoke to me about, sorry to interrupt, but all the people that spoke to me about I might be using ChatGPT to help me find certain topics. As far as I know, none of them ever had that discussion with lecturers because they just thought they're going to hate me for it. They're going to, you know, take down my idea. They're going to think that I'm cheating. When some people, it was genuinely just, I don't know where to start. And I think this is an authority on it. I don't know if that speaks to what I cut you off on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I mean, it's also, I don't know. I mean, in my university, they woke up very quickly and now they've got like movies and obviously they're very urgent, but God knows how, you know, once we start talking, it's never, we just don't stop.
Yeah.
But I think some of this has to come from the students.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It needs to be a conversation and it can't be just teachers coming with their ideas because in a way we don't always know, or we use ChatGPT, but I mean, it just needs to be a mutual conversation, perhaps, saying, you know, students come and saying, this is how we are using it, what do you think? And when I'm standing in front of, even I'm very against this, but I'm standing in front of a class with 5 people that are telling me this is what we're thinking, then it has to generate some conversation.
Yeah, it needs to be an open dialogue, definitely.
You're contagious with it and push it into the class.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that it should be, well, as faculty, people should try to say, this is an instrument, you know, like Wikipedia is an instrument. Until a few years ago, everybody told you, oh no, you should never use Wikipedia at all, like it's the evil incarnate or whatever. Now, if you learn how to use it, then you can take the good from it. Like there are some pages that are really well done. You just have to, you know, be taught how to use it and be taught about. There can be pages really well done. There can be pages that are done badly. So trust it up to a point and then use your critical thinking to evaluate what it is to keep and what it is to discard. And I guess that a discussion about this can be done with stuff like ChatGPT as well. Even if probably now it's still in a phase in which most of the stuff it says are wrong, but it's going to become better and better. So it's better start earlier than later.
Exactly.
But it comes down to the issue of learning to discern what is a reliable source and what is not, right? So for me, my opinion is that is one of the primary things that you should learn in the university. It's learning how to look at a source like a text and discern, is this reliable or not? And I think so basically that's such a critical. We can probably use this kind of software to have that dialogue, but I think that there must be a way to encourage people to engage critically with information and sources, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Also, if you think about it, it's not so different from when we teach students how to use a dictionary. Like if you take os in the Greek dictionary, it's 4 pages, but when you're a student and you have to translate text, you don't spend half an hour reading all the 4 pages of os.
Yeah,
You know where to look because you have been told, oh, if you find os in this position in the phrase, it can be only be this, or this. And so you save time and you just look for the right source